ballistic missiles rained down on the city. This footage captures the moment a drone exploded in one of Kyiv's residential areas. Russia says the strikes targeted military sites in the city. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is due to speak on the phone later today with President Trump. That conversation coming just hours after Mr. Trump spoke to his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. Well, in a moment, we'll get the thoughts of our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, who is in Moscow about those talks between the two presidents. But first, let's get the latest from Kyiv with our correspondent there, Paul Adams. Paul, good to talk to you first of all. A really heavy night of bombardment. I presume you heard and saw some of that yourself.
Oh, we certainly did. It went on for a very long time indeed. Indeed, it started before it was properly dark and went on until it was already light. And we saw wave upon wave of drones coming in excess of 530. That is a new record. The number of drones has been increasing month by month for the last several months now. Not all of them explosive. Some are decoy dummy drones that are designed to confuse and overwhelm the city's air defenses. But I think it is a tribute to those air defenses that, as far as we're aware, only one person was killed as a result of this substantial aerial bombardment. And you could see last night, you could see air defense gunfire going on in every direction of the city, with regular loud explosions as some of the drones were knocked out of the sky, and indeed some of the cruise and ballistic missiles as well. And this morning when we got up, there was this heavy pall of smoke over much of the city and a very acrid smell in the air, which is now dispersed. But it certainly made for an extremely difficult night for an awful lot of people.
Paul, thanks very much for sharing your personal reflections. Do stay with us, but let's bring in our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg. We heard a very descriptive account of what was happening on the ground in Kyiv. This, the worst night, really, since that war began.
Yes, and of course, when you read the statement that the Russian Defense Ministry issued a short while ago about this attack, very different picture, as usual. Moscow claims that it was attacking military sites. It said that this was a mass attack in response to what the Defense Ministry claimed were Ukrainian terrorist attacks. It claims that the strikes with long-range missiles, hypersonic missiles and attack drones were aimed at factories in Kiev producing drones, making other military equipment and at a military airfield and at an oil refinery. That's according to the statement that was issued by the Russian Defense Ministry.
Let's bring Paul back in because, of course, we are hearing that diplomacy continues. Although I did speak to an expert in Ukraine just an hour ago, Paul, who really felt, in his words, that diplomacy was dead on this matter. What is the feeling ahead of that phone conversation that President Zelensky is due to have with President Trump?
Well, we haven't even got confirmation that it is going to happen yet, although it is thought that it could happen as early as later today. And it would follow that conversation yesterday between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. So, yes, the conversations go on. Of course, we had one earlier in the week involving President Macron and President Putin. None of it seems to amount to a hill of beans, frankly, at the moment. The message from Moscow is that diplomacy doesn't seem to be working and that consequently Russia has to continue pursuing its objectives through other means. The Ukrainians are also attempting to give as good as they get. They have mounted their own very considerable drone attacks against targets inside Russia in recent weeks as well. So at the moment, it is the language of war, not the language of diplomacy, that is speaking loudly. And despite all the talk of diplomatic breakthroughs that accompanied Donald Trump's arrival at the White House, of course, talk that he personally was very keen to emphasize, none of it so far has really come to anything.
Indeed, and let's bring Steve in on that very subject, because after that phone call between President Trump and President Putin, we heard from the US president saying he was disappointed by Vladimir Putin. Is there a sense that engagement with Russia isn't really going anywhere then, do you think?
Well, it hasn't so far, that's for sure. I mean, Vladimir Putin quite openly yesterday in that conversation with Donald Trump made it clear that he is not backing down from his war aims. And it seems that Russia right now is not interested in signing up to any kind of a long-term comprehensive ceasefire. Remember, it was back in March that Donald Trump came up with this idea of a long-term 30-day comprehensive unconditional ceasefire that Ukraine and Russia should sign up to. Ukraine agreed to do that. Russia said, well, yes, but, and laid out a number of conditions. And the months have gone by and still no ceasefire. And it's clear that I think Russia feels confident at the moment. It has no intention of stopping hostilities. It believes it has the initiative on the battlefield. And I think also its confidence is fueled by the knowledge that in the White House in Washington, there is an American president who up till now, to this point, for whatever reason, has not been exerting pressure publicly on Moscow, but has been exerting a lot of pressure on Kiev.
OK, Steve Rosenberg, our Russia editor, Paul Adams in Ukraine, our World Affairs correspondent. Thanks very much to the both of you. Well, the BBC has witnessed dramatic scenes on the beaches of northern France when a boat was destroyed by police officers moments before it set off for the UK. Police intervened as it was about to leave the beach, slashing the boat with a knife as it sat in shallow water. Our correspondent Andrew Harding reports from the town of Boulogne-sur-Mer.
Big wave, bigger wave, bigger wave, huge wave. Look at the kids crying. The engine, find out the engine. Okay, oh, they're slicing it. They're coming in to slice the boat now. The police have come in to slice the boat. Look at that guy, he's furious. Okay. Okay, to your right, the policeman here. He's pulling them in to your right. So the police now intervening. They've just come in. They've slashed the boat. They feel it's close enough to the shore so that it's not too dangerous for those on board. And you can see everyone's giving up now.
Well, let's go to Andrew Harding, who joins us from the beach near Calais. Andrew, just tell us more about how those events unfolded.
So we'd been on the beach overnight. Just after dawn, a group of about 80 people came from the dunes down towards the beach and towards the water's edge. They were looking at one small boat that went past. It was already full, so they abandoned that. That went on without picking anybody up. They then waited on the beach, almost like a bus or at a taxi rank, for the next one to come along, which it did so in about 10-15 minutes. It came closer to the shore. At first it was quite orderly. The police were standing on the sand doing nothing, repeating their policy that so long as nobody's in danger and they don't need to rescue people, they don't want to intervene in the water because they could risk people's lives. They could end up making matters worse. There could be panic, there could be a fight and so on. Things in the water suddenly got very chaotic. The waves got bigger, people were getting crushed, people were getting very close to that outboard motor at the back, and it was really pretty desperate. And suddenly the French police decided that they had an opportunity, perhaps when the smugglers weren't too focused on what the police were doing, and one man and then another police officer went in and sliced the boat with a small knife, cutting knife, and it quickly deflated. Everybody, including that young girl you may have seen who looked so clearly terrified in the middle of that scene, she got aboard ashore safely very quickly. Everybody else very frustrated, of course, all those migrants. Many of them will have been through this process countless times. As for the police and their change of tactics, well, we're being told that wasn't a change of tactics. That was a one-off, a decision in the moment that it was more risky, in a sense, to leave the people there as things stood because they were getting in trouble, they were getting close to the blades, there were danger of people being crushed. So they made the decision to intervene. But more broadly, it's not something we're necessarily going to see more of. Even though there's pressure on the French police to do more, they are considering changing their policies. It's more likely to be a change of policy from the coast guards and their patrol boats intercepting those small boats while they're in shallow waters.
Andrew, a lot of your reporting has helped share some insight on who the people who take these dangerous journeys are. Do we know more about who was on that boat and what happens to them now?
For the passengers, many of them will return to the camps, some of them makeshift camps spread along the beaches nearby, others the larger camps up near Dunkirk and Calais. We know that this is a group of almost certainly Kurdish smugglers involved. They have a particularly strong control over some of the routes across the channel themselves, over the boats, the supply of boats. But there are a lot of other smuggling gangs from all different countries, including Vietnam, from Yemen, from Algeria, from Iraq and elsewhere, that are also sometimes fighting, certainly competing for what is a very, very lucrative business, with a lot of people still wanting to take the risk. For about 1,200 euros is the going price, so just under £1,000 to attempt the trip.
OK, Andrew Harding, thank you very much for sharing your insights on that story. That's Andrew Harding in France there. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Football fans have gathered in Liverpool and Portugal to pay their respects to Diogo Jota, who died in a car crash alongside his younger brother. In the last hour, the former captain of Liverpool, Jordan Henderson, laid flowers and a Liverpool scarf outside Anfield to pay his personal tribute to his friend and former teammate. Posting on Instagram, Henderson said it had been a pleasure to share a pitch with Jota, but more importantly, a friendship. The 28-year-old Liverpool forward had been returning to the UK for pre-season training when his car came off the road in Spain. He was in the car with his brother. A wake will be held this afternoon in their home suburb of Gondomar in Porto before their funeral tomorrow. James Waterhouse reports from Porto.
The most solemn and unexpected of homecomings, nevertheless greeted with applause. The bodies of Diogo Jota and his brother Andre Silva were brought back to Porto last night. Candles still flickered at Jota's childhood football club this morning. The academy is even named after him. Tributes came in the form of shirts, scarves and old memories. Here, processing this loss is proving painful.
First time, like, maybe it's a joke, maybe it's a bad joke, but maybe it's a fake news or something. But when I realize, I go to check the news and see everywhere, and I don't know how to react. I start crying a lot.
He left his family, his woman, his child, and I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry because of that.
Sport, and not least football, tends to unite in moments of sorrow. Liverpool, now the summit of Jota's professional career, is too grieving the hole his death has left. In Porto, relatives of the brothers have held a private wake ahead of their funerals tomorrow. Tributes may have come from far and wide, from the biggest names in football. We've just seen the Portuguese Prime Minister arrive at a private wake, but the grief is especially concentrated here in Porto for the men's families. This is, however, very much a mourning playing out in a public way. Jota had returned to Portugal to marry his long-term partner Ruta Cardoso, who yesterday had to make the impossible trip to a Spanish morgue. Those who knew Diogo Jota say he was a player who stayed true to his roots. He's seen as someone who earned his success and ascent to the top of football. His death has shocked this city. However, his legacy as a role model will endure. James Waterhouse, BBC News, Porto.
As we were saying, fans have been paying tribute in Anfield and in Porto. And I'm joined now by Alison Freeman, who is outside the Liverpool Stadium in Anfield, and James Waterhouse, who we heard there is in Portugal. Let's start with you, James. A wake planned in the next few hours, we understand.
Yeah, at the moment, Regina, there's a private wake still taking place with family members, as you saw earlier, and despite the clear global interest, there's an air of intimacy here. I think privacy is being respected, and we're told a more private event will be staged later this afternoon when the Portuguese president is set to make an appearance. But there is no doubting, I think, the impact of the deaths of the brothers, despite the wider football game focusing on what happened on that early morning yesterday. And I think the police seem to be fairly certain of the picture they have generated as to how the crash was caused. Of course, Diogo Jota was coming back for the best of reasons to get married. And now he's not only back sooner than many expected, but people are left here pondering what could have been in terms of a life unlived and the remainder of a career at the very top level. And of course, it's the family that feel the impact of these devastations the most.
Indeed, but also, of course, the fans. And I've spoken to many Liverpool fans from around the world who are deeply hurting. Let's bring Alison in, but do stay with us, James. Alison, we saw a few moments ago pictures of Jordan Henderson laying a very personal tribute, but also fans have been gathering at Anfield since the news broke yesterday, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've been here since early this morning, and there's just been a steady stream of people wanting to come and pay their respects, which just shows that strength of feeling that there is for him. In the past hour, as you say, Jordan Henderson's been here. We saw him, he signed the Book of Condolences, and then he came out very quietly, laid some flowers, wrapped a Liverpool scarf around him, and then he took some time to just contemplate and to read those tributes that had been left, fans silently standing around and respectfully watching as he did that. We've also heard from the Liverpool legend Mo Salah in the past hour. He wrote a truly heartfelt post on social media saying that he was truly lost for words, that it would be extremely difficult to go back without Diogo. He said, of course, that his thoughts are with his wife, his children, and of course his parents who had suddenly lost their children as well. It's just a moment after moment of emotional events here at Anfield today. People have been telling us they're not just mourning a much-loved player, father, brother, son, but also they're feeling for the family that he has left behind.
And James, let's bring you back in. The funeral for Diego and his brother due to take place early tomorrow morning. What more do we know?
At the moment, we're being given loose sort of days when these formalities are taking place, and clearly they are coming thick and fast. We have the wakes today, where you are seeing the powerful mix with the grieving as they try and process what has happened. You saw the very sombre arrival of both coffins last night, and then tomorrow we don't yet know anything about the scale of the funerals, how public access will be established, but there is an air of civility here as well. I think people are quietly paying their respects. There are people wandering the city in Porto shirts. It's a club where Jota had a very successful loan spell on the onset of his professional career, and I think what is interesting is how he is seen as someone incredibly humble despite his rise to the very top of football, and I think that is how he is being remembered. I mean, we saw at his childhood club several photos where he posed with players, where he looked to reinvest into the game he's got so much out of. He did gain international recognition playing with the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, who himself has talked about struggling to process just what has happened, and he is someone who clearly benefited with his time at Liverpool, who have postponed pre-season fitness tests for this week to give the squad a bit of time and space. But clearly this is a death, yes, felt in the relatively small city of Porto, this picturesque tourist destination, but of course more broadly as well.
OK, James and Alison, thank you very much for the moment live in Portugal and Liverpool. Firefighters on the Greek island of Crete are in their third day of battling a wildfire which has ravaged forests and olive groves. The blaze, which began on Wednesday near Lera-Petra, has forced the evacuation of thousands of residents and approximately 5,000 holidaymakers. Europe's been experiencing an early summer heat wave linked to at least 8 deaths, as our World News correspondent Joe Inwood reports.
For days, the flames have raged, firefighters battling them as best they can on the Greek island of Crete. They started near the village of Aklia, but quickly spread through this rugged, forested island, driven by gale-force winds and high temperatures. This is a popular holiday destination, and many of the 5,000 people who were evacuated were tourists.
The smoke was getting closer to our hotel, and then they evacuated the hotel and they brought us here.
They just told us to leave the hotel with small baggage. We leave the big bags in the hotel and we are waiting now.
More than 200 firefighters were involved, with nearly 50 engines and a drone surveillance unit, as well as helicopters. Despite that, the damage has been extensive, and it's not over yet. I couldn't believe the fire could be put out, says the local mayor, because there were thousands of hotspots all along the length of the community, and unfortunately, the very strong wind didn't allow the fire trucks to operate. And it's not only Crete that is suffering. In Turkey, wildfires are still raging in the province of Izmir, where thousands were forced to flee their homes, and at least 2 people were killed. The country has been suffering from a drought, which, combined with strong winds, has spread the destruction. 6 of the wildfires are said to be under control, but many others are not. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
Well, before we go, let's take you back to these live images of the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. It shows you the aftermath of those intense Russian strikes overnight, which authorities say hit almost every district of the Ukrainian capital. While Ukraine said that Russia fired a record 550 drones and 11 missiles. There's more on that story on the BBC News website and, of course, here on the BBC News channel. I'm Regina Vaidyanathan. I'll be back after a short break. Stay with us.